Hey, what's up everyone? Izik Bell here. I would say for me as an artist, I've always put a lot of emphasis on style,
which I kind of see as my own artistic fingerprints. Anyone familiar with my work usually knows it's mine just by the style. A ton of personality, drama, and emotion is conveyed through personal art styles, and it's one of the things that really draws people to art in the first place.
That's probably some influence I took from growing up in that glorious era of 90s comics.
Back then, there was just so much emphasis put on style. It was such a fun era of comics. Back then, you didn't have all these online art critics with their monocles and fake art degrees telling us all how the anatomy needs to look more realistic or, some such nonsense.
I spent a lot of time just checking out art and looking for things to implement into my own style. I think I got to a point in life where I started to become a little desensitized just from looking at so many comics over the years.
But I mean, not that desensitized. I think I've probably just spent an exorbitant amount of my time staring at material like this, and I guess you could say I'm pretty obsessed. But you know what they say about obsession? There's always room for more. Did they really say that though?
And when I started dating Alexa,
she is both my girlfriend and my partner in creating comics. So we have our studio, Akira Crush, and we travel around, we sell our work at comic conventions, and we create our own comic series that we do through Kickstarter. So yeah, we're very busy together.
She introduced me to a whole new world of comics, animation, music, and all kinds of stuff, all coming from Japan and Korea, basically. And for me, Japanese comic, or Eastern comics in general, they were definitely a bit of an acquired taste for me. At first, I didn't understand the humor. There was so much that I just didn't get. And I was just it's kind of weird and it's kind of goofy and I'm not into it until I got into it.
Which has been pretty amazing because I've been able to really just immerse myself in some new stories, and I realized I really missed that feeling of excitement that I used to always get for comics.
I will say, as a lifelong comic book fan who grew up in the States reading American comics, who then as an adult got turned on to manga, I have to say, I don't think that we've accomplished the same level of storytelling here in the West that they've done in Japan.
And maybe that's because we spent the past 30 years or so patting ourselves on the back for quote-unquote deconstructing the superhero, which apparently means using them as allegories for corrupt governments and politicians, which is a complete misunderstanding of the archetypes, in my personal opinion, but we don't need to go into that here. I'll just say it was fresh and cool back in the 80s, but here we are still doing the same thing over and over again.
On the American side of things, I feel like everyone is focused on trying to build a franchise, whereas in the Japanese comics, everyone's focused on trying to tell a great story. There is a big difference, and it is very apparent.
And of course, here in the States, we have the independent market that is very story-driven, so it's not really fair for me to be lumping all American comics into one category because they're all so different.
If you are a fan of reading comic books, and you are able to acquire a taste for manga, I think that you will find a whole new world. And I read a few things, and didn't quite get into much. The first one that really sucked me in was a comic called Chainsaw Man. I actually started reading this comic and got sucked into the story. It quickly became an emotional roller coaster. I found myself loving these characters so much, loving their dynamics and everything that they were going through. This is one of those comics that brings you through the full spectrum of emotions. It will make you laugh out loud while you're reading it. It will make you very sad. It is very tragic at times. After getting sucked into that, it was kind of like, okay, now I'm open to reading manga. Like, what else is good? And there's a lot. Another one I have to bring up, I love this comic so much. It's called Sun Ken Rock. This comic is badass. It is hilarious. It is full of action. It is full of fan service. It is very sexy. And it's kind of like all the violence and the sex appeal and all of that stuff is just kind of flavoring on top of this actually like very epic underlying plot line about love and revenge. But the most masterful comic I've ever read in my freaking life is definitely Berserk. That will fully immerse you in one of the darkest fantasy worlds I've ever experienced. And talk about falling in love with characters and then having your heart stomped all over. And the cool thing about Berserk is, like the creator himself, when he started off, his skills were nowhere near what they became. So at first it's kind of like this cool sword and sorcery book where you have this badass swordsman who's killing demons and stuff. But as it goes on, the creator just grows and grows in skill. He levels up so much that this like pretty solid violent fantasy comic becomes a legit masterpiece as he goes along. And that is extremely inspiring to me personally. That's kind of how I want things to go with Metal Shade. You know, I've done the first few issues and I feel like I can do much better. And I think that the readers are going to get to see that growth as we get more experience and level up our skills. Or at least that's the plan. I took a lot of inspiration how to create more effective storytelling, because at the end of the day, that's really what it's all about. And the cool thing is, like in the East, when you make a badass comic book, it's definitely going to turn into an animation, and very likely that animation is going to be exactly like the comic. This would be like a dream come true in America if they would actually do that. And on the animation side, you know, I kind of grew up with the anime stuff actually. First anime I ever saw was Vampire Hunter D. I would recommend Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust. The second one, it has so many badass character designs in it. I would also recommend checking out Ninja Scroll. That was a big one for me when I was growing up. Ninja Scroll, super violent, very cool character designs. Another one that got me was Wicked City. And that one is just, whoo, that one is a little rough at times. The anime is pretty weird. Like there's like moments where you're like, this is amazing. And then there's moments where you're like, what the fuck is happening right now? I would just say, if you're feeling like maybe you've oversaturated your brain pan with freaking American comic art, start taking a look at stuff from elsewhere, you know? Because if you get into it, it will feel extremely fresh, because it's like all this material that you've never really scrutinized yet. And most of the American comic art that I love, I've just poured over so many times, you know? So, and I still love it. I still do. I just feel like I start to get a bit desensitized. But there's a ton of badass stuff that you could take from anime and manga to incorporate into your own art style. Obviously, it's been a big thing for the past few decades, you know. I am still incorporating anime techniques into my own work. Maybe it's a little weird. I have heard people say that my stuff looks like a mix of Extreme Studios and manga, which is a really weird mix. And that's about all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all again real soon in the next one. Peace!